On Lost Lane there were 2 lines of cherry blossom trees, planted in an overgrown space between the pavement and the brick walls that once supported the railway lines on their journey from the city to the coast. The trees had been a gift, a present from the other side of the world, and they stood there as a symbol of the days of change that had been broadcast across the time zones. Built on Sand is a novel set in Berlin and is told through 14 stories, and in these stories we meet various characters who live or have come from the city, and the book is basically an exploration of how the history of place, how the events of the past, recent and more distant, how they shape the imagination of individual people but also society as a collective. I think of Berlin as almost as a character in the book, in the sense that these stories are rooted in the city. The book could only take place in this city because of the events that are the background to many of these personal stories. But at the same time, I was interested in exploring how, as a writer, the stories of a place can shape a personal narrative for the narrator and for the characters that he comes into contact with. It was called Lost Lane because that had once been a name marked on old maps created long before the arrival of the railway lines, back when the city walls were away to the south and the road passed through a landscape of meadows and marshland, glacial lakes and forests. The Verlorene Weg was a sandy trail, rutted and slow, and it got the name because it belonged to no one, no estate or settlement, no town or village. It was forsaken and doomed, damned and lost, and there were many lost lanes dug into the sandy soil of Prussia. And as it became understood that nowhere truly belonged to no one, and that the lanes were no longer lost, they were renamed. And so the lost lane of the cherry blossom trees was swallowed up as the city spread out to the north and laid a claim to it, with the railway lines on one side and rows of working class tenement blocks on the other. It was all part of a grand plan to turn a garrison town into a global city, one which paved over the meadows, buried the rivers, and overwhelmed medieval villages. I think of the book very much as a portrait of Berlin, but I would say it is, of course, only a portrait of Berlin. It is mediated through the narrator's eyes. It's the same narrator in all 14 stories, and it's, of course, the people that he comes into contact with. And there will be many other Berlins that could be the subject of other books. But I think so. Therefore, that this Berlin that is in Built on Sand is a very personal story, as well as a story of the city. As I walked up the bridge, someone had tied flowers to the railing, hanging there above a collection of red glass candle holders. Inside one a flame flickered, but the rest had long been extinguished. In that big city, the news or story had somehow passed me by. It might have been in the newspaper or on the radio, an item in my social media feed. It might also have not been reported, a small tragedy that was not big enough news. Not that the details of what occurred really mattered. It was clear enough what the shrine on the bridge represented, that for someone there had been nowhere else than this, no other side of the tracks.